Okay, so welcome everyone. If you are willing, please use the chat if you're on a computer to type in your name, food pantry or organization. Share a little bit about yourself if you'd like. We can know who's on the call and you all can connect with one another that way offline if helpful. Thanks for joining. And we today will follow the same pattern that we usually do on this call. We'll have a few minutes for some updates on the front end from Feeding Wisconsin, from DHS, and potentially WisCap as well. We just started a couple months ago a topic for discussion for each of these calls. This month we did flip what would have otherwise been our November topic of public health emergency unwinding. We've moved that conversation to December and bumped up a conversation about healthy foods and healthy eating resources. So we have folks from FoodWise and Jordan Crane from Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin joining today to share more about resources that they have on their end. And then we'll wrap up with some time, of course, for Q&A for them, and then open-ended conversation, peer-to-peer conversation. I feel like that's always one of the more exciting portions of this call for me, to hear what's on your minds and for you all to help and support one another. So we'll kick it off with some updates to begin with. I'll start by sharing some nutrition benefits updates, and really this is a non-update, if anything, and then I'll hand it over to Carol from DHS to speak to updates on TEFAP. So just very briefly, no additional news on the public health emergency at this time. So we know the public health emergency order has been extended through at least mid-January. We should find out next week if there is not an announcement that it will be ended. We may hear next week that there is an announcement that will be the last public health emergency order, and that will help us to launch into some outreach and awareness building of what that means for folks accessing resources, and also what that might mean for you all as you're preparing for individuals trying to make ends meet in new ways. If emergency allotments of food share go away, that would happen at in February would be the last month of emergency allotments. And we know that households are going to be experiencing a need to find resources in other ways to make ends meet, as we know that folks are still struggling with high inflation and other things that are the holidays coming up and other needs that families have on an ongoing basis. So this month, emergency allotments will be deposited on November 20th. So just keep that in mind. I know sometimes that changes when folks might come into a pantry for resources. So as they're approaching that date, I imagine that probably right before that time is where folks might need some extra assistance. It's also around Thanksgiving, so I know this is a busy time of year for you all anyway. So those are the only updates I have on my end. Carol, I did see you. There you are. Feel free to jump on in and give updates from your end.
Okay. Good morning from Wisconsin TEFAP. I just have two updates this morning, and they're both good news and I guess the financial realm, so that's good. We did hear back from USDA on what we're calling the CCC funds, commodity credit funds, and they gave us some more detailed numbers, and it's looking like Wisconsin is expected to receive $10.6 million over the next fiscal years. So that's 23 and 24. Those will likely be a combination of shelf-stable and perishable food items. So that's great for Wisconsin TEFAP. Also, we have learned that Wisconsin's share of TEFAP resources has been adjusted and in a positive manner. So due to our unemployment and poverty rates, they have increased our share for fiscal year 23, 14%. So that's a nice increase due to those updated statistics. And that's what I have this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Jonathan, any updates on your end? Just want to make sure to give you any space.
No, I think that covers it. We're just excited to see what these CCC resources look like, and we hope to see those coming out to counties sometime in maybe early spring or so. and you had mentioned the food stamp update. I think that's really the biggest axe hanging over our heads at the moment, and because that's such a substantial amount of money. I've been looking at the utilization rates of SNAP in the state, and they are starting to trend back up. They had been dropping for a while, and now we're starting to see them go back up again. So we'll continue to monitor that, but that isn't surprising given the COVID resources that are being withdrawn and the high rates of food inflation. So we'll just keep an eye on it.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. All right, so I'm going to turn it right over, launch us into a conversation about healthy foods and food and nutrition resources. We have, like I mentioned on the front end of this call, we have Sarah Smith and Morgan from FoodWise joining us. We'll have them kick off the conversation, and then we'll have Jordan Crane from Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin to follow their lead. So Sarah and Morgan, happy to have you jump right in. Take it from here.
Hello. So yeah, we'll first introduce ourselves before I start sharing my screen. So I am Sarah Smith, and I am the Policy Systems and Environment Specialist with FoodWise at the UW-Madison Division of Extension.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Peden. I'm the Nutrition Education Program Specialist with FoodWise.
Okay, so I'm going to get my screen sharing. Okay. Let's see. Does that work? Oh, here we go. This is where I have to learn all of, this is my first time presenting on Google Meet. So thank you for your patience. And
Sarah, can I jump in and share?
Yes.
For all viewers? You have the opportunity to share yours, to adjust your screen layout as you'd like. So if you want Sarah's PowerPoint to be larger, you can use the 3 vertical dot button next to the leave call and go to change layout. And from there, you can use spotlight or sidebar, and that might make her shared screen a little bigger for you. So feel free to change that on your end if you'd like.
Oh, awesome. That is such good context to have. So thanks for that. Yeah, so we are here to share with you today just some different ways that FoodWise can work with food pantries across Wisconsin and how we're working in the emergency food system. Many of you have worked with us and our colleagues across the state throughout the years, and it's a great time to be reconnecting in this time of transition. So just to give you a brief overview of what our work is. So FoodWise is a program of UW-Madison Division of Extension. Our work is guided by the Wisconsin IDEA and the university's overall commitment to public service. And that's really rooted in the education and the resources of the university should be influencing people's lives way beyond just the grounds of the university. And so being out in the communities all across Wisconsin. So FoodWise specifically, we are a federally funded nutrition education program. So we are funded through 2 different sources, the SNAP-Ed Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program Education, and then FNEP, which is Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. So we really focus on advancing healthy eating habits, active lifestyles, and healthy community environments for families with limited incomes across the state. And we do this through nutrition education and then support for systems change at the individual, community, and systems levels. You'll see our map here really shows where we do our work. The places that have the kind of crosshatch, that's where we have the FNEP funded programming specifically. And we are actually in 71 of 72 counties across the state. So that really does allow us to have those deep local ties within the communities and to really try to work with our partners and the people there to meet the needs as they emerge. So we've really, as I said, we've historically worked closely with food pantries. We know those relationships have really ebbed and flowed in the past few years as your delivery models and your needs have been changing and priorities. So we know our staff are really looking at either, strengthening those relationships or even rebuilding in places where there's been a lot of transition. So I will pass it over to Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So as Sarah was saying, we do our work through focusing on advancing healthy eating habits, active lifestyles, and healthy community environments. And we do this through our nutrition education at the individual, community, and systems level. And we align with and support existing efforts to promote healthy eating and active living by using a combination of evidence-based strategies. So we work through supporting organizations and agencies and improving access, reaching people where they're at. We draw upon UW resources and research to provide effective education and programming. We work to build partnerships, leverage funds and resources, and work on creating health leadership and coalition capacity. And we do all of this with the intention that our work is anchored in an equity framework. So concretely, this means that we center the voices and the priorities of those most impacted by health inequities. We commit to developing our work in authentic partnerships with impacted communities. And while we strive to create opportunities for health for all Wisconsin residents, we prioritize improving outcomes for those communities most impacted by health inequities. And we integrate culturally responsive and linguistically appropriate approaches, strategies, interventions, materials, and resources. And so we use this image to demonstrate what that means. The top image is equality, where everyone's getting the same bike. But as you can see, it actually is only meeting the needs of one of those individuals. But that bottom image is the equity. Everyone is getting a bike, but they're getting the bike that is specific to them, as everybody has their own individual needs. And so how does this translate into providing education? So what we provide is evidence-based, unbiased, and responsive to local needs. As a USDA federally funded program, we use the Dietary Guidelines for Americans and focus on using the USDA tool, MyPlate. The education that we provide can be done through a few different ways or a combination of ways. So we have education lessons that we provide to Pantry clients, and these are done through single lessons or a series of lessons that happen over multiple weeks. And the topics generally include dietary quality, teaching people about good nutrition, how to make their food dollars stretch, how to read food labels, incorporating more fruits and vegetables into their family meals, and food safety. Just to name a few, there are many more topics that we cover. But we also know that what helps change behavior is not only having that knowledge, but also having the tools and the skills that people can leave our sessions with and then start making impacts that day. And so this might be done through a recipe demonstration or a taste test of a new to them food that they're going to be going home with. And then within our programming, we do sometimes have the capability to purchase some food to provide as a small sample. There might be budgetary restraints, and this is going to be very dependent on your local FoodWise program. But what we have found quite a few educators do is to partner with the pantry to get foods from the pantry to use within their demonstrations and to provide the tastings. And then they can say, this is food that you are getting today. You could taste it so you know that you like it before you go home. Or here's what we use to make a recipe, and this is already in your box or your bag that's going home. And we also know that sometimes that direct contact is not always a possibility. So FoodWise nutrition educators can also provide recipes or other resources that can be sent home with clients. And when we look at our education focus, we're looking for impact and what's going to help lead to behavior change. And we know what is going to be the most likely to happen is the impact is going to come through making a connection with people and having that education done within that connection. So while the recipes and resources are a great resource, those connection points are really what is going to be most ideal for our educators to be able to provide education. Sarah, you're muted.
Always hit the little button. So yeah, as Morgan was sharing, we're really committed to building those relationships with your pantry guests, and how, that's the best way that we can really get that messaging out and support their efforts. But another way that we can really interact with you is supporting you all directly, and how you, if, especially based on your interest or the needs of the people coming into your pantry, we can really work with you to focus on how to improve the environment of your food pantry, and really focus on those best practices for providing nutritious food and handling that food safely. So many of you may have worked with this toolkit before. So we designed the Safe and Healthy Food Pantries project. This was a toolkit that was originally developed in partnership with food pantries, food banks, and TEFAP partners across the state. I know some of you on this call were directly involved in the development and the training and the rollout of it several years ago, and then others of you have been using it in your pantries and in your work. And really, it's been designed for you to be able to self-assess your own needs around how to both improve the nutritional quality of your food offerings, then how to promote those changes as you improve that nutritional quality. And then we also have resources for how to improve food safety practices to make sure that all of the food that you're distributing is really high quality and is safe for your guests and clients to take home and consume. So while the toolkit has really been designed as to be done, you can do it individually, self-assess. This is also where our FoodWise staff can be a resource for you to go through this process. Because as I'll show you in a minute, the toolkit's pretty big. There's a lot of information in there, but it's also designed to be a choose your own adventure, that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can take on little bite-sized changes to really, dip your toes in the water, see how it goes. And then if you're like, oh, this is great, we're ready to do more, you can do more. But again, our staff can work with you on that process. We can support you in walking through your pantry, assessing what foods you have, where you're getting your food from, looking at, can a family put together a meal that, really aligns with my plate and the messaging that we're providing through nutrition education. And then if it doesn't, how, figuring out how to make some changes, how to look at, what maybe you're ordering from the food bank or what you're asking for in donations, and then how to communicate those changes to your donors. And then we can help you, put up new signs and nudges to really help, your guests see the changes that have been made and really promote those more, offerings that are of higher nutrition quality, and really make sure that they understand the, how that can be beneficial. And then also looking at, cultural needs of your guests as well, to make sure that you're providing food that is relevant to their culture, their diets, their, desires for food, because we know that food has a lot more context than just nutrition as well. So I'll take a minute to look through the toolkit. I do want to put out there that we are actually in the process of starting to review the toolkit and to update, so that we know that we are providing, the best resources possible on how to offer culturally appropriate foods, how to, really get that information directly from your guests, so that you're meeting their individual needs. Because even, if we take, one culture that we think we understand, we know there's going to be differences within the culture. We also want to look at, we know that there's a greater need for, addressing allergens within a food pantry, and then also looking at practices for how to distribute during, a major public emergency. And so trying to move those forward so that, we are all way more prepared. We've learned a lot over the past 2 years. And so that's where we can help try to gather all of those learnings and then disseminate them. So we'll be reaching out to you all over the next year to really learn more from you. And this will also come through another process that we are doing with TEFAP through the Reach and Resiliency Grant Project. So we're going to be looking to y'all to provide us with a lot of your feedback and learning so that we can really provide better tools and resources for you going forward. So with that, we'll do just like a quick little staff put in the link to the website. That's also a piece that I'm just going to be upfront. It is not the best designed website in the world. It's on the list. And as we were talking with Jordan yesterday, a lot of things are on the list, and that is on the list of getting a much more user-friendly website going. But so what I actually will do is I'm going to try a different screen share. So I am really testing my presentation abilities within Google Meet today. So let's see. Okay, I think I've got this figured out. Awesome. Hopefully that is coming up for you all. Let's see there. Okay, and it's loaded. So what I'm showing you is the PDF version of our toolkit. So many of you might have the actual paper bounded copy. If you were at the conference in April, I was there distributing them, so we may have crossed paths and met each other. But this is, so you can get the PDF on the website. Look, Jonathan, we got a great quote from you here, so appreciate your contributions. You can go back and remember that you put that quote in there if it's been a while. So you see all the people that, contributed greatly to this project. And, so this really goes through all of the contents, but I'll cover the contents right here. So it's broken down into sections on program assessment, and we have some different ways, some just like checklists that you can assess, then finding strategies on offering safe and healthy food, how you put that plan together for how you're going to make those changes, how you implement, and then how you evaluate. So again, like I said, this is a large resource. There's over 100 pages in it, so you can get lost, but that's why we say you don't have to do everything at once. You can take on a bite-sized bit and really, just make one change at a time. So I'm going to try to go down. I'm sorry if the scrolling is not super desirable. But so different ways we have like assessment. So really looking down at what your sources of food are so that that's a good way to really think about where do I have control over ordering and where do I not always have control. And that just being clear with yourselves on that. And then we have checklists like this where it's like, okay, do we have a nutrition policy? Yes, kind of, no. Do we provide shopping lists? Do we make these healthy choices visible? So this is just simple ways. And then these are the things that you can then say, okay, we're just going to focus on making choices visible and really going through that. So that's just a quick overview of that resource. This is not meant to be a whole training on that, but I did want to share that with you. So that's just an example of like ways that we can work with you on, really improving the nutrition and food safety environment of your pantry. Then, so the final thing that we did want to share with you is just, if you're like, I haven't talked to a FoodWise educator in a while, I don't even know who the FoodWise educator is in my county anymore. But, as we know, staffing changes have happened. We've experienced many of them. So I just do want to quickly show you how you can find your FoodWise educators. I'm just going to share one more time. There we go. Okay. So the last bit. So the website, our FoodWise website, and we'll put it in the chat, we do have a search function where you can search the extension directly to find your local FoodWise educators. And so you will see that there is a place where you can pick your local office. And so you can, and it's by county, that's how we're organized. And then when you select the county, it'll pull up who is affiliated with our program in your county, and then you can easily reach out to them to find those educators. I should also note the one county that we are not in is Ozaukee County. We do have staff in surrounding counties, so if any of you are in Ozaukee, you can still reach out to us and we can try to get you connected to a staff in a surrounding county. We just currently do not have staff assigned to Ozaukee. So with that, and then you can, so yeah, thank you. And we can do questions now. So you can feel free to reach out to Morgan or myself. We are always happy to answer questions and or connect you to local staff if you're just trying to figure out who to connect with. And I have not, I know there was some stuff in the chat. Okay, so yeah, asking about a toolkit. Oh, awesome. Hearing about classes. Oh, good stuff. So yeah, so we can do questions now, or we can go over to Jordan and then we can all answer questions later. Sound good?
I can jump in since I think some of the questions that I have might kind of have some overlap between both of our work. So I think that would work if everyone is okay with that, but feel free to fill up the chat with your questions as they pop into your mind. All right, and just like Sarah said, this is my first time presenting on Google Meet, so we will see how this goes. All right. Can you all see my slide deck? Oh, it looks like it's working on it. Okay, perfect. It looks like we're up. All righty, so yeah, we are, thank you, Steph, for inviting us to come and kind of chat a little bit about this. Obviously, I work at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin, so not everyone on this call might be within our service area. So I want to kind of give maybe just a high level look at the food banking perspective of nutrition and just talk about what's happening kind of at like that national level, the local level, and how your food banks can maybe support you and share some resources on how we might be able to do that, and then also encourage you to kind of nudge your food banks around supporting you in the types of tools, resource development that you are looking for as well. So we are super, super lucky in the state of Wisconsin to have FoodWise to really be the experts and the support around creating kind of these nutritious food environments at our food pantries. And even providing that direct education and training for food pantry staff. I can say firsthand, seeing that in action and just hearing the feedback that I've heard from some pantry guests, I think it's just such a great thing to be able to have directly at that food pantry. So I highly encourage, if you have not connected with a FoodWise educator, or as you're kind of pulling yourself out of the pandemic, I definitely encourage you to reach out to your local FoodWise educator and just to see maybe where some of those resources might be. Like Sarah was sharing, they can support in so many different avenues and aspects, whether it's hands-on or providing support to your staff as well. So like I said, I'll kind of just share some of those high-level things about what's happening in the landscape around nutrition and food banking. And then I really, really want to take some time at the end to kind of hear from all of you to give us some feedback around what specific needs or tools or supports you're looking for in this space, so we can all kind of collectively collaborate and then create the supports and the resources that you are looking for. All right, so like I said, my name is Jordan Crane. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the health programs coordinator at Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin. So we support the 16 southwestern counties of our state. But I know many of our food banks all function kind of in a similar model. So hopefully what I'm sharing will kind of translate to how some of this work might trickle down to the pantry level. So we at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin are one of 200 plus affiliates of Feeding America and one of the 6 food banks in the Feeding Wisconsin State Association. So there's a lot of benefits to kind of being part of this network, and I'll kind of touch on some of those things and some of those resources and tools around the Feeding America network and the Feeding Wisconsin network that have supported our work in providing nutritious food to the community. So at the national level, there's really been a shift towards nutrition security and equitable food distribution strategies. So Feeding America is one of their strategic pillars is to nourish. And it's really to look at centering community food preferences, their dietary needs, and even looking at the cultural importance of food. And they've committed a comprehensive food sourcing strategy really to distribute more nutritious food items to help kind of create those environments, those nutritious food environments, and create more toolkits and support for the food bank network and then also the food pantry network to really support the utilization of those additional food resources. So the benefit that I hope you will all see or are seeing is that there will be a continued increase in those diverse nutritious food offerings available to you through your ordering system, especially with your food bank partnerships. And then also coming down more support around creating, again, those kind of community-centered access points for food and really focusing on what the community would like to see at the pantry and having us be the supports for you to ensure that those food resources are there. Because, of course, before you can even encourage nutritious food choices, you have to be assured that you're going to have that continued reliable source of nutritious food, and that's where your food banks come in and support. So one of these tools, being part of the Feeding America Network, has many, many benefits, but one that I find to be really beneficial is access to their toolkits, the latest research and data all across the board in food banking, whether it's food sourcing, development, marketing, advocacy, programmatic best practices, and even like health and nutrition. So if you haven't, or if you are kind of curious about what's happening in the landscape across pretty much any operational thing in your food pantry, reach out to your local food banks to get access to these. Yes, I can definitely share the slides, Liz. Thanks for that question. Reach out to your local food bank because they have access to this network and to these toolkits. So if you haven't seen them, or if you're curious about what's happening at that national level, reach out and they can connect you to those resources. So one of the tools that Feeding America developed around nutrition was the Foods to Encourage framework. And I'm sure that many of you have heard of this before, if not are well versed in what Foods to Encourage, or F2E, stands for. So this was the first nutrition framework that was designed in 2010 to evaluate the nutritional quality of the food that lives on our food bank shelves. And this was all created in alignment with the National Nutrition Recommendations following the DGEAs, the Dietary Guidelines for America. And Foods to Encourage was a really great starting point, but there were many limitations to it. So it really only classified different foods into 31 different product categories, and then just took kind of a percentage of each one of those categories and considered a certain percent as foods to encourage. So within those, of course, like your fruits, your fresh fruits, your vegetables, your meat, your fish, your poultry, your pasta, fresh produce, rice, all of those things. But then it also took into account like 30% of your dairy, 30% of your salvage product. So while it was a good, I think, first step towards having kind of an acknowledgement towards nutrition and tracking that and just supporting our food pantries and sourcing more nutritious food options, there were limitations to it that I think were brought to light, and there have been changes since that I'm excited to share, and I'm sure some of you have heard about those changes as well. So this initial focus on nutrition, though, prompted Feeding America to design a suite of tools basically to support the food pantries and implementing some more nutrition education strategies, which were nudges. So as Sarah mentioned, these really are those like subtle changes in environment at the pantry. So that could be having more nutritious food items right at eye level on the food pantry shelves, increased signage around choose me, I'm healthy with a little apple or something like that, and then really increasing the visibility of those more nutritious food options. All of these things, of course, that your FoodWise educators can support you with, and maybe just picking one or two of those things to really start. Again, nudges are just this like subtle change. So you can start with something small and really build that out. But through the past 12 years or so, since the nudges and these Foods to Encourage frameworks have really been pushed at the Feeding America Network, we've seen an increase in about, I think, 50% of Foods to Encourage that were promoted. It has increased. So the number of foods, excuse me, so they've seen about a 50% increase in the amount of food that's going off the shelves that were promoted as Foods to Encourage. So this really is working. I think it's a really nice testament to say, like, if we do these small kind of adjustments to the environment, that it really does help support folks coming into the food pantry and make healthier choices for themselves. So that was a lot there. So what I have on the screen here, it's really hard to see. There's a lot on here, but I'm sure some of you have seen this as well. So these are the new nutrition guidelines that have come out just recently. So in 2019, Feeding America Network and a bunch of nutrition experts came together and said, hey, we need to kind of look at the Foods to Encourage framework and maybe give it some new life. So they came together and put out these healthy eating research nutrition guidelines in 2020. So instead of looking at like yes, this is a Foods to Encourage, no, this isn't, it's looking at foods in a 3-tiered type framework. So the green items are the choose often, the yellow, the choose sometimes, and the red, choosing rarely. And it's ranking foods based off of their levels of saturated fat, sodium, and sugars, since those are kind of our nutrients that have that direct link with increased chronic disease. So this is, again, in alignment with the most recent nutrition research that exists out there. And these HER nutrition guidelines are the current national level tool that's encouraged by Feeding America for their partner food banks to use. And I share all this just to kind of note that the national network is really recognizing this importance of providing nutritious foods to community, and that food banks, your area food bank, will likely be adopting something similar to this as their own internal nutrition guideline in the coming years, or maybe they already have. And then again, the hope is that there will be some supports around supporting you at the pantry level to be able to source foods within certain categories, and then also promote the foods in the different categories based off of what you see in your community and what your capacity is. So along with this HER nutrition guidelines, there was a suite of tools that was developed, I believe, by the Connecticut Food Share in partnership with the Hunger Research Institute, called SWAP, so Supporting Wellness at Pantries. Again, this might not be new news for all of you, but I think that this is a really neat suite of tools. If adopting something like the HER nutrition guidelines is something that you're looking at doing or curious about, there is this suite of tools to really support the pantries in implementing these guidelines. Alrighty. So here at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin, we have actually rolled out a new strategic plan, and oh my gosh, I guess it's been just a couple months now. And our focuses really are around nutrition security and food equity. Again, kind of in alignment with our national standards, and also just that recognition that food is not just food, right? We need to be thinking about how we are actually nourishing community in the best way that we can be, and are responding to community need in that way. So we are currently in the process of defining what nutritious means and what culturally meaningful food means to Second Harvest. And then through that, we are going to come out with our own kind of internal nutrition policy. And I call it nutritious food statement on here. We haven't nailed down what we want to use as our terminology yet. And I think that that's just to show that we don't want this to be something that our food pantry network has to align with directly, but it's really just a statement of where we want to show up or how we want to show up better as a food bank and sourcing nutritious food options. So thank you, Steph, for sharing that. So currently in our work group, as we're defining nutritious and culturally meaningful food, like I said, we'll be creating an internal goal to actually hit certain percentages of our inventory around nutritious food and culturally meaningful food. And then from that, we'll create kind of an external statement to our pantry partners and to community that this is something that we're focusing on and this is something that we are committing to. And also just to kind of give that context around how we plan to achieve that goal. So within this statement, we'll also be determining what tracking system we do choose to use, whether that is the HER nutrition guidelines or maybe a hybrid or something similar. Again, we're going to kind of take it bit by bit, knowing that it takes a lot of work to track inventory. So hopefully once we do determine kind of what our system will look like, that will help our pantry partners then be able to track what the percentage of their foods might be qualified as nutritious according to our definition. So for example, the HER nutrition guidelines could be kind of implemented into our online ordering system, which will then translate to the agency partners ordering system. So you can actually see like which foods fall within which category. So this is all coming down the line. It'll be many years in the making, but we're really excited to see kind of this shift happening overall. The nutritious food statement will also kind of help us shift our donor relationships because that's a big piece of this. We want to ensure that our donors, our food donors and our financial donors know that we are committing to this nutrition security and increased equity by sourcing foods from more value-aligned partners, from BIPOC vendors, from women-owned farms, things like that, to really just exemplify how we want to show up in community in a different way. And this nutritious food statement will also hold us accountable to our relationships with our food pantry partners, so we can better capture the community voice and to be able to source foods that is meaningful to that community as well. So I hope that from this statement, whatever we determine to call it, the relationship with our food pantry network will be strengthened, and then there will be tools, supports, resources, increased capacity that trickle down from that, especially around providing nutritional diverse food options, but going beyond that as well. So one of the things that we are kind of standing behind for this commitment is our Farm to Food Bank initiative, and I just put this slide on here because we just released our video, and I think it's really great. That just shows, again, our commitment to ensuring that our pantry partners have consistent access to nutritious food, and also thinking about how we're supporting food sovereignty in our local economy and supporting our local growers, makers, and producers in the state of Wisconsin. And one of the things that is going alongside with this Farm to Food Bank initiative is that we've committed to provide free produce, milk, and eggs to all of our pantry partners throughout this fiscal year. And we're currently actively campaigning to keep this funding and to ensure that this funding and support stays for our pantry network. So this is just an example of, again, how we're trying to stand behind that and then also have that support for our food pantry network to ensure that they have nutritionally diverse food on their shelves. So these are not necessarily kind of tangible resources, but I did just want to kind of share and say that this is something that there is a commitment at the national level and all the way down through the food banking network and system. So some things that your local food bank and we at Second Harvest can definitely do is providing that access, that consistent access to nutritionally diverse foods, offer capacity. So we're looking at how can we support our food pantries in increasing their nutritional quality of food in their own communities. So what type of financial resources can we contribute or reallocate to our network in that space, whether that's buying more refrigeration and freezer systems, that kind of thing, more shelving systems, what kind of things can we be looking at to really encourage this? And then also encouraging and supporting the client choice models. I know that most pantries, that's always a goal, right? To have that client choice, so then folks can really choose and feel strengthened in their ability to kind of choose what's best for their family. And that's something that we food banks can do to come in and support. So can your FoodWise educators. they can come in and kind of look at and see what might make most sense and what might be helpful or supportive for you in trying to adopt a different type of client choice model. Definitely connecting you into your community nudge experts, the FoodWise folks. Again, they can come in and support training for your food pantry staff, do hands-on demos. I mean, it's just, I feel like that's a resource that needs to get utilized in a greater way. So definitely connecting with them, or even taking a look through the Safe and Healthy Food Pantries toolkit, I think will just prompt a lot of ideas and support around how to connect with them on that. We as food banks can advocate for sustainable funding around ensuring that you have access to that nutritionally diverse food product. And if you're curious if your local food bank is doing anything in that space, reach out, nudge them, right? This is all kind of a collaboration that we need to be talking about, and you need to be telling your food bank that we find this important and we want to know as well what you're doing in that space to increase access to nutritious food. Creating those donor nutrition guideline strategies, that's something that we are all working on creating, but we would also be happy to kind of share and co-create those with you alongside you and to give you kind of some more teeth around saying, hey, you know, we don't want to accept this type of food anymore, and this is our food bank's nutrition guideline statement, and this is what we're going to try to align with. So we can kind of support you in those shifts of sourcing, if you will. And then, of course, co-create tools, trainings, resources in response to what you tell us that you need. So at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin, we've started Apples training, which, I'm going to get this wrong, it's agency, partners, and pantries learning education sessions, I believe. So I believe we're doing these quarterly, and it's really to get our food pantry partners together and to provide some sort of education around a topic that they have told us they would like more information on. So again, reach out to your food bank, see if there's something like that that you can encourage them to start, just so you can have that consistent support around resources that you're looking for. And then in the bottom little corner there, I did just put a little snapshot of our partner agency portal. So in our portal at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin, we do have a nutrition education area. So if you are a partner of ours, please go through and check it out and let us know, what are we missing? What other resources would you like to see on there? And how can we support you better around that? So I think I'm like 7 minutes past my time, Steph, but I really wanted to just kind of hear like what you all are doing in this space. Kind of just share maybe some things that you've been doing, how you've been working with FoodWise, but really just to give us feedback around like, what are some things that you would like to see? Is it direct trainings? Is it physical recipe cards? What types of things are you looking for as a food pantry network around providing nutrition education, creating those nutritious food environments, sourcing nutritious food? I would love to kind of hear and just do a little crowdsourcing to determine and to help us kind of co-create and collaborate on this a little bit better.
Yeah, so let's open it up for any questions that you might have for the FoodWise team, for Sarah and Morgan, and also for Jordan. And let's start with questions, and then we can move it on to conversation. I know that many of the folks on this call have their own resources and have created a lot of information themselves. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to do some peer learning and sharing to come. Any questions? Liz, I see your hand up, and we will include, if the presenters are open to it, we'll include their contact information in the notes as well.
I just threw my email in there, so feel free, email away. And I can't speak for all food banks, but to your question, Chris, Chris asked mentioned recipes for 1 or 2 person households and fast supper recipes for busy families. So this is something that I really wanted to get on our new fancy website, was kind of a recipe bank. So one-stop shop for all of our pantry partners in community to be able to go and access. And we, at this time, we did not have that in our framework for the new build, but that is something that is kind of on the docket for the next phase. So again, my goal, my hope is that I'll have a full kind of produce list. So if somebody has eggplant on their mobile food pantry or has like a papaya, and they're like, what is this? I don't know what to do with it. They can go to our website, click papaya, a full list of 5 or 6 or 7, however many recipes I can get on there. Will be there for anybody to download, whether that's a pantry to download and print themselves, or just for folks to print off for their own utilization. And there are many, many different nutrition websites and recipe resources out there. But again, I really would like to have something that is a one-stop shop for our pantry partners to be able to access and utilize. So it's in the works. It'll be coming. Anyone in our network will definitely be hearing about it as we start developing out some of those tools.
Liz put a question in the chat that they're planning a major renovation of their pantry and warehouse in 2023. Are there any resources, expertise that they could tap into to understand layouts to promote healthy choices?
Definitely. And I can share over with you what Feeding America has created around creating spaces that encourage healthy choices. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but pop in there. I think that is something that your folks can also help kind of like look at the landscape and help create that environment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that is definitely something that I know our staff have worked with other pantries on before. So we can definitely make sure you're connected, Liz.
I see a hand up. Feel free to jump on in.
All right, that's me. I can certainly jump in on one. I'm from the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry, and I have to say we're pretty blessed in being able to have open choice. We've got a really robust grocery store feel here. Our FoodWise folks are phenomenal, we use them for everything. So really good things. My question, I appreciate, Jordan, your presentation on kind of a mix of nutrition insecurity with food insecurity. I think one of the conversations we had at the board level was trying to adopt some nutritional insecurity in maybe our mission statement, but where we got hung up truly is in the sourcing of those food items, right? Because if we don't have the consistent supply, what we ended up asking ourselves was, okay, if I get a pallet of sugary cereal that's coming to my doorstep for free, am I going to deny it? Isn't it better to have something than nothing, right? And so how far we actually can take the idea of nutritional security, still understanding that, boots on the ground pantries have to find sources to make it available. Just wondering if you had thoughts.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what is so great about having even FoodWise help and support that as well. And that's something that we at Second Harvest of Southern Wisconsin have been really, really intentional in taking our time to define, like, if we're going to have X amount of our inventory be nutritious as we define it, what does that mean for our donors? Are we going to still receive and accept those types of products? And I think definitely where we land is more of that holistic approach to nutrition and nutritious and nourishment, and thinking about how food might mean more than just supporting a certain kind of dietary framework that somebody might be having, but it can go beyond that, right? And like nourishing your wellness, nourishing your emotional health, that kind of thing. So we are, again, taking like a good hard look of like, what do we want to be presenting and how do we want to have these frameworks with our donor policies as well. And I think just from what I've heard from other area food pantries across the state as well is taking it kind of bit by bit. So really just committing to having a certain percentage of your inventory be what you qualify as nutritious. And then using those kind of nutrition nudges and those environmental cues, if you will, to promote and to kind of not push, but promote those types of products that are on your shelves, but then also having that delicious Captain Crunch that is just like nourishing at the core and just is necessary sometimes too. So I've seen pantries and within our service area and just across the country who have have decided a very rigorous kind of donor guidelines where they will not accept candy, any sugar sweetened beverages or cereals, anything like that. And that is something that they're standing behind. They're really focused on nutrition and they've kind of set those parameters. But I would say more often than not, most pantries that we have worked with or have seen, they kind of take that kind of lenient approach, I guess, if you will, where it's promoting and committing to acquiring a certain amount of nutritious foods, but also leaving space for those nourishing foods as well. So it's really kind of taking whatever your priorities are at the board level, thinking about like where that lens is coming from, asking your community what they need and what is important to them. That's a big piece of it. So doing some sort of surveying and asking them, what does nutritious mean for you? What would you like to see more of? And using that as a way to kind of develop your policies or your frameworks is, I think, really important. That was
Thank
a
you.
lot, so.
Any other question or resources to add to the conversation? Any additional comments? This is your time.
And I did want to mention too, all I see is Oshkosh Pantry site. I apologize, I don't know your name, but there are some great tools that can kind of walk you through those conversations and to kind of look at those different pieces. If that's something that you're interested in, I'd be happy to share that.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any additional questions. I will update the notes with the presentations and other resources as I've been gathering them throughout the call. A lot of information on this call. I'm really appreciative of all the expertise that Sarah, Morgan, and Jordan have brought to this. And I, again, know that a lot of folks on this call have their own resources and have created a lot of opportunities for healthy eating at their own in their own communities. So please continue this conversation and continue to share. I will post, I'll drop the link in the chat here again, and as to where you can find the notes and recording. Our next call is again the second Thursday of the month. It'll be next. It'll be December 8th at 11 o'clock. Same time, same place. We'll be discussing public health emergency unwinding on that call. And with that, thanks again to Sarah, Morgan, and Jordan for bringing all your great information and expertise. Feel free to reach out to them and their counterparts for resources and connections. And thank you all for all that you do. I appreciate all the frontline efforts that are happening across the state to keep folks fed. So take care. Have safe holidays ahead.